William Morrow and HarperAudio present I'm Only Wicked with Hugh by Julianne Long, performed by Justine Eyre. Chapter 1. The kitchen of the Grand Palace on the Thames was usually a soothing oasis of feminine gossip, camaraderie and industry, and one of Mrs. Angelique Breedlove Durand's favourite places in the world. Today, however, a chilling snatch of overheard conversation froze her just as she was about to cross the threshold. She pressed herself against the wall outside the door and surreptitiously listened. 2 succulent hams, I should think. Helga, their cook of all people, was speaking in the kind of hush Guy Fawkes likely employed when conspiring to blow up the House of Lords. My thoughts immediately went to 2 roasts of beef. Dot's reply was similarly uncharacteristically cagey. Angelique was mystified. Hams and roasts amounted to the kind of budget massacre Helga would likely never countenance even if the king were to take a room. And he had appeared one fateful day. For the Grand Palace on the Thames's budget was a temperamental, intricate thing, requiring tinkering and babying, prone to sudden expansions and shrinkages. Managing it was an art and a science that Angelique and Delilah, the boarding-house proprietresses, and Helga relished. She thought furiously. Then she bit back a smile when realization dawned, peeled herself away from the wall, and strolled in. Were the 2 of you discussing the thighs of the footman Mrs. Hardy and I interviewed yesterday? Thank God she and Delilah hadn't hired anyone who could lie glibly. Helga and Dot froze. Their eyes were luminous with guilt. Amusing. But if any of these men should become members of our staff, I trust you will refrain from comparing their anatomy to food. Last night, her husband had compared a part of Angelique's anatomy to a luscious, ripe peach just before he'd nipped it. But it was the context that was important here. I know you will be as respectful of them as you would hope they'd be respectful of you. Unfortunately, while the man under discussion was indeed possessed of fine thighs, he stole a teaspoon on his way out the door. Captain Hardy was compelled to chase him down the street and pry it from his clutches. Needless to say, we won't be hiring him. Captain Hardy, Delilah's husband, had also been compelled to give the footman a good whack with it. Neither Delilah nor Angelique had anticipated that the search for a footman would prove both harrowing and undignified. It was clear that finding a qualified man willing to work long hours for modest wages at a lovely and comfortable boarding house, granted one in a somewhat challenging location near the docks, would be easier if they'd relaxed their standards to include scoundrels, lechers, and the just plain thick. A spoon! The devil you say! Helga was incensed. The kitchen was her kingdom, which meant the spoons counted among her subjects. She hadn't been present for this theft, as yesterday's interview had taken place in the reception room. And don't you fret, Mrs. Durand. We will be all that is respectful when the right bloke joins us. Dot nodded vigorously in agreement. Getting the right bloke to join them was a matter of some urgency now that they'd nearly finished refurbishing the adjacent building, which was now connected to number 11 Lovell Street, the Grand Palace on the Thames's street number, by means of a cleverly built passage. Perhaps the most thrilling part of the annex was the ballroom. Angelique and Delilah hoped to entice Londoners of all stripes to buy tickets to musical evenings held there, which would help recoup their renovating investment. They could begin as soon as the little stage was completed. And it would have been this week, if the workmen they'd hired to build it hadn't disappeared. It was possible disappeared was a trifle prematurely dramatic. It had only been 2 days. Angelique frowned when she realized that one of the kitchen maids charged with slicing apples for tarts was all but motionless, staring vaguely toward the buttery. Every few seconds or so, she languidly moved the knife up and down. It missed the apple entirely. Angelique lowered her voice and said to Helga, "What's wrong with Maggie?" Helga spoke in a hush. Mr. Cassidy returned from Devon this morning, and you know the first thing he did? Angelique shook her head. She crooked her finger for Angelique to move closer.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?